And they didn't just run. They quit the CIA. Behavioral analysts, those elite minds trained to break down terrorists, decode lies, dismantle threats, walked out the building like it was cursed. Why? Because of one person. They looked into their profile, studied their psychology, tracked their patterns, and came back pale like they'd seen a ghost. One of them said, "Recruit this person or we're all dead." Yeah, that level of fear, that level of mind. This wasn't a threat with a weapon. This was a walking riddle with no answer. A brain so unpredictable, even the best couldn't map it. They tried everything: scans, tests, simulations. All failed. One agent literally said, "Their mind isn't dangerous because it's unstable. It's dangerous because it's too stable." Ouch. They weren't emotional. They weren't cold. They were calculated. Calm under fire. Smiling when surrounded. One move ahead in a world 10 steps behind. Every fear, every pressure tactic, every psychological trap thrown at them flipped right back like a mirror. And the scariest part, they enjoyed it. The analysts started losing sleep, started doubting their own thoughts, because this person didn't break. They bent reality around them. They didn't play the game, they rewrote it. They weren't built to obey. They were built to end patterns. And right when the CIA thought they had control, this person did something no one expected. They vanished. No trace, no trail, number, digital signature, just a whisper left behind. "You don't find me. I let you know when you're ready." Damn, that's not a threat. That's domination. And that's why the top minds quit. Because they realized the real power wasn't in controlling the world. It was in being unreadable to it. Asterisk, they didn't just analyze this person. They tried to contain them. They thought maybe with the right words, the right offer, the right manipulation, they could buy loyalty. But you can't own someone who doesn't even value power the way you do. This wasn't someone chasing clout, chasing money, chasing revenge. This was someone who studied the world like a broken machine and decided to build their own operating system. And every time they spoke, even silence got louder. You ever seen a room full of elite agents go silent mid-breath? Because one person walked in without saying a word. That's not charisma. That's threat level Omega. You don't teach that. You don't train that. You either are that ... or you break trying to fake it. They say this person once walked out of a containment interview with a smile while the agents behind the glass started arguing with each other. Not because the subject escaped, but because they all started seeing things differently. Mind flipped. One analyst wrote this in their resignation letter. "We thought we were studying the threat, but it turns out the threat was studying us." Asterisk, and here's the real twist. This person didn't threaten a soul, didn't lift a finger, didn't even raise their voice. They simply made people see themselves. And that alone was enough to shake the system. You ever meet someone who doesn't blink when everything's burning? Someone who looks at chaos like it's just a puzzle waiting to be solved. Someone who makes the people in charge question if they're the ones being manipulated. Damn, that's not a civilian. That's not a criminal. That's a mirror so clear. Even the strongest minds couldn't handle the reflection. So the CIA had two options: recruit or regret. But when the best couldn't even define what they were dealing with, they chose the third option. They quit. Because when control becomes impossible, when fear becomes respect, when a person walks into the system and the system folds in silence, that's when you realize you're no longer dealing with a subject. You're staring at the template for something the world isn't ready for. Asterisk, they didn't recruit them. Because how do you recruit a person who doesn't need anything? No leverage, no weakness, no fear of consequence. You threaten them. They laugh. You offer them protection. They say, from who? You offer money. They say, you're already broke in the ways that matter. OHHH. And when they smile, that's the part that made the agents sweat. Because it wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. Certainty that they'd already calculated every scenario. Every betrayal, every bribe, every move you could make, and decided it didn't matter. Because they'd still win. See, you can't beat someone who's not playing your game. And this person, they built a new board, and didn't tell anyone. The rules, even now, no one knows what they want. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. The CIA called in top field operatives, shadow units, deep cover experts. Guess what happened? Each one came back saying the same thing. Asterisk, I wasn't observing them. I was being observed. Damn, when ghosts start seeing, the ghost hunters, the whole haunted house flips upside down. Asterisk, and the weirdest part, there's no trail of chaos, no criminal record, no confirmed victims, just patterns of people changing after contact. Leaders acting strange, movements collapsing, whistleblowers suddenly going quiet. It's like they touch reality and bend it without leaving fingerprints. One theory, they're not here to destroy anything. They're here to reset everything. Not with bombs, not with bullets. With clarity so dangerous, it makes control impossible. You don't silence someone like that. You don't frame them. You don't assassinate them. You either submit to the shift or pray they never turn there. Full attention toward you, because if they ever decide to aim, the fallout won't be fire, it'll be truth and truth. That's the most violent weapon of all. So now the files are sealed, the name scrubbed, the analysts gone, and somewhere out there, that mind is still watching, still listening, still 10 moves ahead, and will never know if they'll strike. Only that if they do, there won't be a warning. Asterisk, they erase the subject's name from every file. But whispers don't die that easy. Codename Zeroface, because every time someone tried to describe them, their mind went blank. Not because they forgot, because they couldn't explain what they saw. It wasn't appearance, it was presence. Like reality itself lagged around them. One handler said, standing near them felt like standing next to gravity. You don't see it. You just feel pulled in, like something's bending. That agent retired the next day, moved off-grid. No contact since another agent tried to tail them. Keyword, tried. Because somewhere between the third and fourth turn, they forgot what city they were in, forgot their own mission, showed up back at HQ 3 hours later, repeating the same sentence. They're already inside what? No one knows. But ever since, surveillance systems have been glitching. Top brass meetings interrupted by static. Secure lines echoing with their own conversations, played backwards. Yeah, let that sit with you. Some say they're not one person anymore. They're a network. An idea that cracked through firewalls and minds alike. Not digital, not human. Something in between. The ghost of every suppressed truth, every manipulated system, every lie wrapped in a flag. There was one final attempt to contain them. Black site, no name. Underground facility built just for psychological high-risk assets. They brought them in blindfolded. 12 agents on site. Within 8 minutes, All surveillance cut. Backup called in. By the time they entered the chamber, it was empty. No breach, no alarms. Just one message scratched into the steel wall. Asterisk, you tried to trap a mirror. Now face yourself. Asterisk, damn. After that, operations were shut down. The entire division was disbanded. Analysts signed NDAs with blood level restrictions. But the story leaked. Not through files, not through intel, through fear, through silence, through a shift in behavior, because now every major agency, every hidden hand, every secret council that thought they ran the show, they all flinch when a new anomaly appears. When a system breaks for no reason, when a voice speaks too clearly, they wonder. Asterisk, is that them? Asterisk, and here's the coldest part. No one's sure if they ever left, or if they're already seeded into everything, into code, into culture, into the psychology of those who question too much, into people like you. Asterisk, you think this was just one person? Nah, this was the spark, and sparks don't die, they spread. After the CIA backed out, other nations tried to step in. Russia, China, MI6, even private military labs, all tried to recreate the anomaly. They pulled prodigies from bunkers. Built A is around behavioral prediction. Studied cult leaders, sociopaths, silent monks, but none could touch it. Because you can't engineer what doesn't follow your code. Ouch. And here's where it gets twisted. ... It wasn't that this person hid from the system. It was that they were always outside of it, watching, learning, adapting, because every law they already predicted, every trap. They saw 10 versions of it coming. Every manipulative option offered by governments or corporations. They wrote better ones in their head and laughed. They weren't a product of war. They were a reaction to it. Born from decades of lies, manipulation, and power games. So now, intelligence agencies don't try to stop them. They study their silence. Watch the ripples, because when they move, entire belief systems start to collapse. There was a pattern one analyst found before they went dark. They noticed that anywhere this person passed through, something shifted. A whistleblower speaks. A regime falls. A hacker finds what they weren't supposed to. A nobody rises. And every time it looks random. But it's not. It's surgical. It's deliberate. It's the mind of someone who doesn't need a throne, because they're sitting in the shadows behind all of them. Damn. And if you think you're safe because you're just watching this from your screen, you're already in the pattern, already in the ripple. Because here's the part that never made it into any report. They don't force change. They trigger it. Inside you, they plant the seed. Say nothing, and walk away while the world reshapes around the doubt they left behind. So next time you question reality, next time your instinct screams that something's off, next time you look in the mirror and feel like you just woke up from someone else's plan, yeah, they were here, asterisk. Because here's what no one wants to admit. This person didn't just slip through the cracks. They are the cracks. The breaks in the system no one could seal. The gaps in logic no patch could fix. They didn't sneak past security. They are the reason security exists now. Oh, someone once said, asterisk, every firewall has a shadow, and they live in that shadow. Asterisk, and the wildest theory out there. They're not even operating alone anymore. Not followers, not fans, but echoes. People who crossed paths with them face to face or digitally and came back different. more focused, less afraid, unshackled. That's the real danger. This isn't about recruitment. It's infection, an ideological virus moving faster than code, spreading not through words, but through awakening. You know how a glitch in a simulation isn't just an error, it's a clue. That's what they became. A walking glitch in the human pattern. They don't want to be famous. They want to remain untranslated. Because as long as they can't be defined, they can't be contained. And if you can't label the threat ... how do you stop it? They understood something no agency ever grasped. Control only works if people don't realize they're being controlled. So what happens when one person starts snapping people out of it? You get revolutions that don't look like riots. You get wars that don't use bullets. You get silence that speaks louder than governments. And that's why the analysts quit. That's why the meetings turned cold. Because they realized they weren't watching the next threat. They were watching the end of an era, not an attack. A transition out of compliance, out of obedience, out of programming. Because that's what this person really is. Not a weapon, not a rebel, but a reset button in human form. And now the world doesn't know what to fear more, that they'll return, or that they already have. Asterisk, because here's the part no one will put on paper. This didn't start with them, it ended with them. Everything before, that was noise. They weren't born into the system, they woke up in it, and immediately knew it was a lie. From the beginning, they didn't adapt to the world, they dissected it. They tore apart every rule, every fake moral, every invisible chain they were told to worship, and calmly said, asterisk, none of this holds me. OHH, damn, imagine being so mentally free, even fear can't find a grip on you. You're not brave, you're not reckless, you're just done playing pretend, and that's what made them dangerous. Not their fists, not their face, but their ability to see through the entire game board and still smile while flipping it upside down. They didn't need followers. They didn't want control. What they wanted was clarity. And once they had it, they left a trail not of destruction, but of realizations. Power players started folding, not because they were attacked, but because they looked in the mirror and couldn't unsee the fraud they were protecting. One by one, the system turned on itself, and still no commands, no manifesto, no declaration, just ... presence. One operative, deep in the field, wrote a line before disappearing. No signature, no trace, just this. Asterisk, I looked for the threat. Then I became it. That's when I understood ... They weren't the virus, they were the update. Asterisk, oof. Not a rebel, not a savior. A new version of mine, so streamlined, so clean, so cut off from fear that control just slid off them. And the scariest truth of all, they never asked to be noticed. They didn't post, didn't preach, didn't demand anything. But the more they disappeared, the more the world started changing around their absence. Governments scrambled, whistleblowers emerged. Silent revolutions brewed where the cameras didn't reach. And every time someone asked, who started this? It always came back to that same untraceable ripple. The same legend whispered like a glitch in the minds of those just waking up. So now, ask yourself, ... have you really been thinking your own thoughts lately? Or are you just now starting to hear the voice they planted in all of us? Asterisk, because at this point, it's not about who they are anymore. It's about what they've activated. You feel it, don't you? That tension in the room when the topic shifts. That silence in the mind when truth scratches at the edge of your beliefs. That itch in your soul, like something inside you just remembered it's not supposed to sleep anymore. They did that, not with speeches, not with weapons, but with presence that rewires you from the inside out. And the wildest part, they never needed permission. They didn't storm the gates. They just walked past everything, like they already owned it, and now everything feels off, doesn't it? Leaders losing grip, narratives cracking, influencers speaking, but no one's listening. Control systems grinding like old gears, trying to hold on to a world that's already slipping away. Why? Because once one person shows you it's all a lie, it's not a rebellion, it's a reset. Ooh, and here's the sting that keeps the agencies up at night. They didn't fail to catch them. They were never meant to. Because this wasn't a chase. It was a test. A test to see who was still programmable, who was still loyal to the illusion, who would cling to control, and who would wake up. And when the reports started showing patterns, global unrest rising in sync, silent protests with no leaders, digital footprints forming shapes that couldn't be mapped by AI, that's when they realized, asterisk, this wasn't a breach, it was a birth. Asterisk, not of chaos, but of a new kind of consciousness, one that moves without marching, one that spreads without speaking, one that doesn't overthrow power. It just makes power irrelevant. Damn, and now the most terrifying possibility is the simplest one. What if they were never one person? What if the real twist is that they were just the first to break free, the first to detach, the first to burn the script and refuse a role? And now the signal's loose. The update is in us, not as followers, not as soldiers, but as mirrors. Every time someone questions the system, every time someone rejects fear, every time someone chooses truth over survival, that ripple grows. So, now when governments try to silence dissent, when corporations flood your mind with distractions, when they sell you fear dressed as comfort, remember this, asterisk, you weren't meant to be controlled. You were just taught to forget that, asterisk, and they didn't come to destroy the world, they came to remind you. It was never yours to begin with, but the next one will be, asterisk, because here's what you're not ready to hear, They didn't disappear, they dissolved, into symbols, into silence, into questions you were never supposed to ask. They became the shadow between your thoughts, the voice that whispers, this can't be all there is. The reason you suddenly look at your job, your school, your rules, and feel nothing. They planted doubt like a weapon, because doubt leads to questions, questions lead to truth, and truth destroys the architecture of obedience. And Odon, you get it yet? This was never about power. This was about pattern. Interruption, because the system doesn't need you controlled by force. It just needs you, predictable, wake up, eat, obey, scroll, compare, consume, repeat, the same loop. Dressed in different distractions, but then they appeared. And suddenly, people started choosing silence over noise, discomfort over distraction, authenticity over approval. That's when the system screamed, because control doesn't panic when you rebel. It panics when you detach, and they were the blueprint for detachment. The quiet refusal, the calm no, the unshaken eye contact when the world tried to sell them a leash. No anger, no chaos, just complete removal of permission. They didn't fight the system. They watched it collapse under its own weight, just by refusing to hold it up. And now people are starting to feel it, in conversations that trail off when truth gets too close, in jobs that feel hollow no matter the paycheck, in screens that feel louder but say nothing, in hearts that were taught to chase everything but still feel empty. That's not depression, that's awakening. That's the old operating system malfunctioning in real time, because you can't unsee what they showed you. And once the illusion breaks, it doesn't shatter, it peels, layer by layer, lie by lie, until all that's left is you, raw, unfiltered, unchained. And that's the future they started. Not a war, not a rebellion, but a remembering that you were never meant to serve systems. You were meant to shape them. So if you feel it now, if something inside you is buzzing, twisting, cracking under the weight of a life that no longer fits, don't run, sit in it, burn in it, because that's how new worlds begin. Not outside of you, but through you. And they were just the first to bleed for the upgrade. Asterisk, they didn't escape the system. They became the reason it can never trap us the same way again.